Tonight, former West Indies cricketer Ian Bishop on the changing landscape in Caribbean cricket.
Phil Simmons is now back. Dwayne Bravo, Kieron Pollard, there's a shift in captaincy, a change in the selection system. Do you agree? Those are major changes for just 1 year.
And the underlying issues facing the global game, from ball tampering...
I don't know how you legislate against that.
...to inequity.
Hasn't been a good thing for the sport, the amount of control the BCCI holds. Ian Bishop, welcome to ViewPoint.
Thanks for having me.
Ricky Skerritt marked 1 year as Cricket West Indies president this week. What have you made of West Indies cricket? You've been following West Indies cricket around the world for the last year. What do you make of West Indies cricket in his year?
I think there have been some promising things. I prefer to speak about what's going on the field, the product on the field, because I'm not an administrator per se. I don't have a lot of experience in that way. So I do believe that the white ball team, for example, is showing some really promising signs. The T20 team has an immediate project ahead of them, which I think they're building nicely towards with the talent available. The one-day team is a work in progress. I think that's a longer-term project heading towards the next World Cup, but there are some promising signs there as well. Administratively, to grade the administration now, for me, I think would be unwise, because it's only been a year, is it?
It's been a year.
And in any form of business, a year is such a small window to make long-term projections and grades. I think is unfair.
But he made a lot of changes, major changes in this first year of his presidency. Do you agree with some of them? He got rid of Richard Pybus. He installed Floyd Reeve on an interim basis. Phil Simmons is now back. Dwayne Bravo, Kieron Pollard, there's a shift in captaincy, a change in the selection system. Do you agree? Those are major changes for just 1 year.
Yeah, one or two of those which were made just prior to the World Cup, I think on reflection, and I understand that in the political sphere of things, whether you're talking about micropolitics or macropolitics, that there are things that need to be done politically. However, just from a cricketing perspective, maybe on reflection, a little bit more patience from my point of view could have been handed down just prior to that World Cup instead of those drastic changes, because the chemistry of the team, what they were building towards, would have needed time to blend, and it wasn't. But I think we'll only be able to judge the other things over the next year of their tenancy.
It is a crucial year for West Indies cricket. It's a crucial year because we just wrapped up a West Indies Women's World Cup in terms of the women placing third in their group, didn't qualify for the semis. The men's T20 World Cup is in October in Australia. If the men do not win that World Cup, do you expect, and would you expect, and should we have radical changes to the West Indies men's team?
No, I don't think so. I believe firmly that the firepower and the leadership of Kieron Pollard will be instrumental in catapulting or keeping the West Indies team in the top 4. But when you look at what England bring to the table in T20 cricket, when you look at what the way they've played the last World Cup and won, when you look at what Australia will bring at home, for example, I think it's still a tough thing to say West Indies have to win a World Cup. I don't think that should be the yardstick. I think it's a process. The West Indies are a fair team. They should be in that Final 4. But to say drastic changes if they don't win it, I think that's an exaggeration.
A few of the players who are on that team came back at a very senior moment in their careers. Dwayne Bravo came back out of retirement. So my question is, should we now look towards the future of West Indies cricket as opposed to continuing with these senior players?
You said players plural, but you only identified Bravo.
Kieron Pollard is also in his 30s.
Right. I think that Pollard...
Lendl Simmons is also in his 30s.
Yeah, but is it a young man's game, you're saying?
I'm not saying it's a young man's game, but I am saying, should we now start preparing the future of West Indies cricket for the next World Cup?
50 over World Cup.
both 50 over and the White Ball World Cup.
This upcoming World Cup?
No, not this one. After this one.
After this one.
After this one.
I think you have to play that by ear. I mean, we're jumping the gun there, to be honest. Bravo has been brought back into the fold, Dwayne Bravo, that is.
A decision you support?
Well, I think that he brings a lot of experience. I am not saying that he's going to this upcoming T20 World Cup, you know. I think it was a wise thing because we've lacked death bowling. This guy still has a lot of gravitas in T20 cricket around the world. So to get him back into the fold, to see whether he's still on top of his game, what they've done is they've created a huge pool now of players that they can choose from. If all of those players, including Pollard, including Darren Bravo, Dwayne Bravo, whether Sunil Narayan comes back, Andre Russell, whoever, if they're on top of their game, then it gives them a really nice problem choosing the team for that T20 World Cup. But I am sure Dwayne Bravo didn't come back into this team saying, hey, I'm the big dog, I'm back, I'm going to the T20 World Cup. He knows he has to perform, so I see nothing wrong with that.
As a commentator, you cover international cricket. How far is West Indies cricket lagging behind the rest of the international world?
A lot of things to put into place on the ground. For instance, we recently had an Under-19 World Cup in South Africa, and we saw Bangladesh win for the first time. They've got a number of things that they've put in place down there, and it's great to see them now rising to the top. Even the men's team are doing a lot better. The women's team is a work in progress. Been to Australia and watched what Australia are able to pump in economically into their women's side of things. So we don't have those revenue streams, and I think that must be understood. All the things that we're talking about at grassroots level on the ground, it requires finance, it requires revenue, and that is going to be the consistent challenge for us here in the Caribbean. Skill-wise, I don't believe that we're that far behind, if we're far behind at all any other country in the world. I think we're on par with many.
I'm glad that you touched on that financial aspect of West Indies cricket, because around the world there seems to be a global inequity when it comes to the top three nations and then the rest of the cricketing world. How big of an issue is this, and why isn't it being discussed more prominently at ICC board meetings and around global conversations, really?
I think it is being discussed. There have been many conversations within the ICC boardroom that I know have happened. There's been a lot of talk within the media about the inequity. But it comes down to, I think, those bigger nations being a little bit more egalitarian in their outlook, a little bit more altruistic in the way they view the game, in helping other nations to develop. I mean, if the West Indies are strong, if Bangladesh are strong, if Zimbabwe is strong, then world cricket has a better product. So I think those are ongoing conversations that are happening, to be honest, Ryan. So we struggle with that. I mean, everybody wants a piece of the Indian market, for example. So in our T20 competition, the CPL, there's always that juggling act. How can we time the games to tap into the Indian audience? So if you hold it at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning, the locals don't want to come. So the ground looks empty.
But across India, millions of people are watching.
Millions are watching. But if you hold it at night, the grounds are filled. It's a wonderful product, as we've seen. But it's a bad time on the subcontinent. And the West Indies, because of the time zone, is always going to find it difficult. So it's beyond me to come up with an answer.
So let's talk about India's control of cricket. Has it been a good thing for the sport, the amount of control the BCCI holds?
Well, control is I think control is a strong
It is a very
word.
strong
They
word.
have
But
influence.
Influence,
I don't think
control.
they control, they have influence.
And because of that influence, they've been able to control certain aspects of the game.
Just like England did.
Correct. You're not wrong.
Decades ago.
You're not wrong.
I don't always agree. As I said, from my own personal point of view, I always have an outlook where I want to see equality across the board. But that's my life view. Yeah. So I think a lot of those countries that have more power in terms of economic power still have to go through that process of understanding that there needs to be some give and take. But again, that is for me spitting into the wind, because I know discussions have been had in the boardrooms. The West Indies, New Zealand, Bangladesh team, representatives of those nations generally go into those meetings and share their views. So don't feel that as we sit here, those views are not being aired. There is a constant battle from a West Indian perspective, from a New Zealand perspective. I've sat on ICC cricket committees, so I understand and I'm very privy to the experiences of those countries having a voice. It takes time.
Coming up, 2 years on from the ball tampering scandal that rocked cricket.
I don't know how you legislate against that.
Regional cricket is the feeding ground and the breeding ground for the West Indies men's team at all levels. What do you make of the regional 4-day setup? Is it sufficient? Is it on par with county cricket and state cricket for us to feed our West Indies men's senior team?
I don't know if I can say that it's on par. I mean, we've talked a lot ad infinitum in the Caribbean, and I know that there have been steps, for example, when we talk pitches, which hone techniques of particularly batsmen, where I think that's an area that we're struggling in the Caribbean for the last couple of decades. I know there have been efforts to make that situation better. There have been an effort to professionalize 4-day cricket. So I accept that strides are being made, but there's still room to go. When you look at the spinners who are still getting a lot of wickets in our first-class cricket, domestic cricket, we're seeing a few fast bowlers coming through. So look, I've seen domestic cricket in England, I've seen it in Australia. I don't think we're that far off. People are saying we're far off. We're not that far off. I mean...
So what is the gap then?
I can't specifically give you a number, but I do think that what I think is important, let me put it this way. This white ball team that we have with the Nicholas Purans, the Shimron Hetmeyers, these exciting talents, the Brandon Kings, the O'Shane Thomas, Fabian Allen, if we can somehow keep this group together, and I'll be specific now, this one-day team that has underperformed so far, the next World Cup is what, 3 years away or whatever? If we keep this group together, I am very confident that if we find 2 more fast bowlers and a spinner, and show faith in this group, it will challenge some of the best teams. But that's the long-term project I'm talking about, or medium-term project. The T20 team, I think, has a shorter distance to travel. I think they've got a good coach in Phil Simmons. They've got a good captain in Karen Pollard. And if the white ball product, Ryan, and for our viewers, if that product can somehow fulfill its potential and do well in that T20 World Cup, I think there'll be people having a closer look at West Indies cricket, which will create additional revenue streams. And once those revenue streams come in, you'll be able to finance better domestic products. Women's cricket needs an infusion of money. Australia cannot be putting as much money as they are into cricket. India are putting so much. England are putting so much. We don't have as much to put in, so it's hard for us to compete. So that's why I think the next 2 years, 3 years of white ball cricket, significantly important to West Indies cricket.
I just want to also talk a little bit about the state of the global game. This week also marks 2 years since the ball tampering situation across in Australia. Cameron Bancroft and Steve Smith and Dave Warner. Is the game better off now 2 years after, with these guys having served a ban and coming back into international cricket?
I think so. I don't know which angle that question is supposed to address.
Is cricket any safer now to watch?
Safer?
From a spectator's point of view, you had one of your fellow colleagues, Michael Holding, actually cried when this young boy from Pakistan, Michael Holding cried on it. It's difficult for
That's different though. Let's remember that's match fixing as opposed to ball tampering, right?
And
so let's differentiate the two.
Let's differentiate, but let's take it from a common spectator's point of view.
Right.
Watching, supporting for a number of days across a 5-day test match. You know, it must disappoint, if not hurt spectators, to watch a team, support a team, perhaps against or for, cheat.
And you question the integrity of the result.
And so is it now, do you think from your travels and covering international cricket that the game now is any safer from these types of acts?
I think it's definitely a good game to watch. I think there are definitely steps that have been taken because of the actions, not only of those two incidents that you talked about, the ball tampering with the Australians. They're not the only ones who've done it.
Certainly.
Let's be careful with that. Mohammed Amir and all of those that went before him. I think the ICC, the administrators have put things in place. But my question is, you cannot, I don't know how you legislate against that. I mean, there are so many loopholes and borders in the current climate that you have to close in order to eradicate it. But I do think we have a good game. I do think that a lot of players now are wiser about the game, but there will always be people pushing the letter of the law to its boundaries to try to get victories, Ryan.
You say you don't know how to eradicate it. Were you in support of Steve Smith and company coming back to international cricket,
Yeah,
or should they?
absolutely. You know, we have a society and laws, and even in our sphere of activity as humans, people break the law, they get punished, they serve their time, and they're allowed to try to build a life thereafter. In some instances, depending on the crime that you commit, you're not allowed to go back into that sphere of activity. But I think that these guys, there are a lot of people who say the punishment was too harsh from their own home board. It is what it is, but I admire the fact that they've been given the chance to come back, because we had a situation here with one of our own players on the recent tour of India against Afghanistan. A young man, young kid, Nicholas Purani, lovely young kid, had a serious error of misjudgment. He did something that was wrong. He confessed to it, he accepted it. So what should happen now? Should we not allow this kid to play cricket again? Come on, we have to be merciful in everything that we do.
I also want to talk a little bit and have to talk a little bit about your playing days. I mean, you know, you cover so much cricket now. You cover so much cricket now, you know. I mean, it goes without saying, Bish, that you made Trinidad and Tobago extremely proud. You told me not to flatten you on TV, but
Please don't.
But you represented West Indies cricket so well. Your career itself would have promised so much more had it not been for injuries. When you reflect, do you ever reflect? You have a lot of time to reflect during a 5-day test match in the commentary box, watching Dale Steyn power towards the crease. I mean, you know, what's it like to reflect on your own career sometimes?
I'll be totally honest. I mean, I generally tend to be honest, so that, I mean, that's not a comment that I should use. I don't tend to look back with wishes on my career. I was privileged just this morning in trying to prepare for our discussion. When I was left out of the West Indies team at the end of my career, I have no complaints. I'm not one of those guys who will walk around and say, God, those people were wicked to get rid of me. In fact, I thought they should have done it a year before it actually happened. I had a great run. The injuries they are what they were. I was just privileged. I never thought I'd play for West Indies. So I had a chance to do it. I had a chance to earn a living, to support my family, which is still a relatively young family, and I'm so grateful for that.
I just also want to touch on that key aspect. You know, right after cricket, you didn't jump into the commentary box. There was life after cricket for you. People don't know the story of how hard you worked in between your commentary career and ending your cricket career. You did some work here in Trinidad in journalism, I believe.
Well, once I stopped playing, I went in to work for a private company and private enterprise in the public relations department. I didn't know what I wanted to do. It took me a while to find my footing. I did some radio work. on cricket. I went to study at Leicester University a few years later on, and I got a master's degree in communications because I didn't want to be one of these guys who get into broadcasting basically only on the back of playing. So I wanted my certification as well. And so it was really by chance that I got into cricket. After I finished playing, I was happy doing what I was doing in the corporate world. And there was a West Indies tour to England in 2000, and a friend of mine, who was a friend of mine, Kelvin Williams, had a friend, former Trinidad and Tobago all-rounder, was very friendly with a guy who became an agent, and he messaged me and asked me if I was interested in doing commentary in England. And I said, well, yeah, well, if you want to show me something, fine. And he just told me to send a demo, and I sent him a demo, and one thing led to another. Michael Holding put in a good word for me at Channel 4 in England, and everything sort of kicked off from radio into that.
One thing led to the next.
Coming up, how spirituality guides Ian Bishop at the crease.
It informs how I speak about people.
You've been criticized for not criticizing. People on social media have said that you're not outspoken, that you're afraid to talk about the issues of West Indies cricket. But you yourself do not genuinely believe that criticizing solves much, at least, not least I should say, constructive criticism.
I do have my days where I'm not a vitriolic person. If I have to say something is wrong, then I have my way of saying it without vitriol. And if people are intelligent enough to understand what I'm saying, then they will see that I'm sort of almost making the same statement as someone else. But I believe in talking about the product on the field. Administration, if that's what they want to call it, it's not my field. I'm not going to get on the airwaves. It's not my personality anyway. Even when players aren't doing as well and someone may call out a player in a certain way, people are people. People have brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. They have siblings who are hurt by a lot of the things that we say. We don't see the private life of people, so I believe that we have to be very careful in calling something wrong or calling it right. You're never going to find me, Ryan, calling wrong right. I believe we live in a society where people are calling wrong right. I'm never going to compromise on that. But the way that I say something is never going to be vitriolic. There are people who can do that. That is not my personality. If you're sitting there in the wrong position, I'm going to tell you you're sitting in the wrong position. But I'm not going to shout at you to do it.
You say something very key there. We have to understand that people's lives are also private. I'm not trying to get into your private life here, but you travel the world as an international cricket commentator. You've also got a family. What's it like to not only be away from your family for so long, but to be traveling, to live in a suitcase, really?
It's tough. I have a really good wife. We've been married since 1993. She's very understanding. She trusts me implicitly. I trust her implicitly. So third-party involvement as born-again Christians is never a factor for us. It's just the point of sometimes when you're away from someone for so long, as she is away from me, or my two kids are away, you can pick up different hobbies, and suddenly you find that that person is not aligned with what you've grown into. So, but look at my marriage. I love my wife and kids, but it's hard. And that's why the current state of affairs, if we're talking about the coronavirus and the impact it's having on our country and the world, I'll preface what I'm going to say by saying there are people suffering in Port of Spain, in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, in the world because of the economy, the impact it's having. People are losing jobs. They can't afford to feed their kids. Those are big things. But in a certain way, I'm happy to have had a little bit of downtime for however long it lasts so I can reconnect with my kids and my family. So that's the good thing. But I know there's a bigger picture where people are really struggling out there. And I empathize a lot with what people are going through.
I cannot talk to you and not talk to you about your spiritual life. You're an extremely spiritual person. You don't have to be connected privately to Ian Bishop to know that. You're on Twitter and you tweet about these things. Your spiritual life is extremely important to you.
That's the basis of who I am. It's been that way since I was 13, 14 years old. I am a believer. My family is based around that, and that carries me, and that sort of feeds in when people say that I don't like to call people out. That informs how I speak. I am a merciful person because God has had mercy on me. I've done so many wrong things, and yet I'm still here. So it informs how I speak about people and who I speak to. I'm not a person that likes the limelight. One of my pet hates is arrogance. I don't like arrogant people around me, people who are in things for themselves, because I think humanity is bigger than that. So look, without my Christian faith, I wouldn't be the person that I am. So all the other things don't really matter as long as I believe in Jesus Christ, and as long as He's the center of my life, I'm good.
Ian Bishop, thank you very much for being on ViewPoint.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.